Welcome one and all. It's time for more Lockdown Hobby Time episode 20. And as you can see here, the fact that this bad boy is on the table means that the Grotesques are complete. And if you're alien to other forms of social media, then maybe you haven't seen the pictures of them yet. So we're going to go through those in a minute or two. And this guy is going to be the main subject of today, and we're going to look at some other things as well. And then, just thinking you need a small little bit of a nice relaxed break after the Grotesques before diving straight into the Hellfane, this huge monstrosity. So that is officially next on the chopping block, but we're going to do a little bit on this guy first, just as a little bit of a palate cleanser, shall we say. We've got Steve in the chat already. Hello there. Speaking of whom, we organised a bit of a miniature trade recently, and I just got a big pile of Night Stalkers today in a parcel. Lots and lots of Scarecrows, which is what I was looking for. So I think I've only got, is it 15 assembled so far? So I've got a big pile of them, and a few other little bits as well. Some extra dudes, I can't remember what those ones are called. They might be phantoms. And also some parts for a Terror, which presumably means that I can get a Terror cheaper just by buying the base body, which I think is a Dead Zone model, isn't it? So presumably that's cheaper than buying the complete Terror. I need to look into that though. So very exciting times ahead for the Night Stalker army, and I've definitely got enough to be getting on with now. I don't need to rush out and buy the Mega Night Stalker army just yet. Got enough to be working on. And this guy has also got a spray lid for himself now that the Grotesques have been turfed out of town, that they've been completed. So he's going to be worked on at some point as well. He obviously needs a bit of priming, and they should look quite similar when they're finished, hopefully. So before we go into any painting for today, we're going to have a look at some images. And let's just check I've got all this lined up here. I've got pictures of all my Grotesques ready to roll. And there we go. So there's the Grotesque Horde and the Grotesque Champion side by side. And I'm very pleased with the way these guys have turned out. Racking up plenty of likes on Facebook already. And I stayed up quite late last night finishing these bad boys. There wasn't really much to do on them after the stream. All that they needed really was the varnish and then attaching to the base. And once they're attached to the base, most of them are pinned with at least 2 feet on there, and then super glued as well. And that tends to leave a bit of a white residue around the feet. So the easiest way to solve that is just put a bit of Nuln Oil on there. You could probably do it with any kind of liquid really, it would probably break down that super glue residue. But I use Nuln Oil because they're on very dark bases, so it seems to work nicely. And it took me a while to get them all attached on there so that they weren't touching each other, which would be the ultimate nightmare. I don't know how anyone, unless you have them just completely overhanging all the edges of the base by a huge degree, I don't see how anyone's going to fit 6 Grotesques onto that base, especially if they're using 2 of the kind of champion kind of model, who takes up much more space than some of the others. And if you're not reposing as well, yeah, I don't know how anyone can do it. I'm sure there's some kind of Tetris master out there that would be able to fit them all on without any overhang at all. But with this unit, there's only a tiny bit overhanging the front. So here's the main unit, and I'm quite pleased with how the eyeballs turned out, and I'm glad I went in and did those black lines down them. I don't think they would have looked half as good without that. The only bit that's slightly overhanging, I think that guy on the right at the front, I think his big claw pokes out the base a tiny bit, but not much. Maybe a teensy bit, and then at the back maybe someone's leg spike, possibly a little bit as well, but not much at all. Pleased with how little they're hanging off. And I think they're looking very, very spicy, ready to get their teeth and fangs and claws sunk into the enemy. We've got Graham in the chat as well. And I did some nice close-ups as well. Normally when I do close-ups with my units, I think actually that close-up looks terrible because you see things that the naked eye is not supposed to see. But I think these guys, they actually still look quite tasty with a nice close-up as well. Casey says you can have them piggyback on another. You could, and the guys on the right there, they're almost piggybacking on each other. I had to actually raise the ground at the back corner there so he could actually stand up with his big arms poking over the top of the guy in front. Otherwise he would have been stabbing somebody with that very spiky weapon he's got there. And I think these guys do stand up quite well to close-up scrutiny, which is why I've actually got the close-ups here. I like that central eye on the leader there as well. I've put up all these pictures all over Facebook if you want to get a longer look at these various Facebook groups on the Kings of War Fanatics and the Abyssal Dwarf group and my own Facebook group, which is in the description. And the champion, who I'm also pleased with. He's a little bit different because he's just got a little tiny base all for himself, and there is physically no way to fit him on there unless he's diagonal or you repose his limbs somehow. And I decided if part of his feet were going to be poking off the edge, then I don't want it to be the front feet. So I made sure that his back leg is kind of hanging off the edge a little bit. You can probably see it there. A little bit of his foot is just poking over the edge at the back, which is fine. But I didn't want that nice decorative skull to be overhanging the edge. Definitely, that would have looked a bit silly if you ask me. So you could turn him diagonally. You could reposition his head so that it's facing a different direction, which would then allow you to do that seamlessly. So there we are. There are the grotesques completed. The first project of lockdown hobby time completely off the table and ready to roll. And I'm in the process of setting them up for some nice army-wide shots as well with the rest of my Abyssal Dwarf army. I just need to actually clear off my gaming table. There's a lot of parcel boxes and other things on there at the moment. They need to be moved off so that I can free up the entire lava mat, because this army is expanding rapidly. And when the Hellfane's in there as well, it's going to need another picture, but he could be a little while off yet. It does take me quite a while. Owen's favourite is the champion, apparently. Well, I think the champion is the coolest looking model, but the one thing he lacks is eyeballs, and I think the eyeballs look nice on the rest of them. He does look sufficiently different from the rest of them, so you can immediately identify, yeah, he's a champion, he's a special grotesque. He's one that's actually survived a couple of battles, and he can be tooled up now. He can even get a face mask and big actual metal weapon, not just the horns he was born with and then bits of rock shoved into his limbs. So let's turn off that slideshow now. If you haven't seen enough juicy, grotesque goodness, then you can head over to my Facebook group and see all those pictures in all their glory. And you can stare at them for as long as you like. So, this bad boy. Yesterday, I said that I was going to dry brush him in pink. And, true to my word, that's what I'm going to do. So let's get some light onto this sucker. And the dry brush. There we go. And let's get out Squid Pink from Vallejo Game Colour. And the wet palette here, let's see how that's doing, because yesterday I was trying that out as well. And I can report that all these paints that I used yesterday are still wet. Every single one. So the black, the red, all the different shades of red. And the fact that I mixed it, it turned into kind of this gradient here, because I was mixing it in stages. And that allowed me, when I was touching up bits on the feet, like the champion's foot that was hanging off the base, I wanted to paint underneath that. I was able to pick the perfect shade from that, and it was all still nice and wet. So, seems like it's going to be a good investment, this wet palette. I don't know how long you're supposed to leave it wet before you dry it out and change it and wash the sponge. I need to look into that. But for mixing colours and for keeping things nice and wet, can't argue with that. And it should save me in my paint bill in the future, using up less paint. So, I don't really need the wet palette for this dry brushing process though, so let's stick the lid back on there. And I suppose I could use it just to splodge a bit of pink on there, I suppose. And then I'll just dry it on something else. So let's try that. So giving it a good shake. And there's a blob. We won't need too much. And I'm not going to be too careful with this. I don't want to mess up the hair too much, but the hair is going to need more work anyway, as I don't think it's quite what I had in mind. I think it needs a bit more spice and sizzle to it. So we're going to dry brush absolutely everything here in this pink, and then we'll go around picking out details later. So for now, just focusing on the dry brushing. So getting some paint on there, and then wiping it off over here on this piece of newspaper from about 8 years ago, which has had all my dry brushing done on it in that time. So it's built up quite a thick crust of paint now. Owen says, don't get ahead of yourself with that figure. I'll wait for some clarification on what you mean by that. Casey says, once I have no room for new paint on my paper is when I clean mine out. Well, we'll see. That does sound logical, though. Okay, let's get dry brushing over these lumps and bumps all over this guy. Okay, Owen was making a pun. Wonderful. How very Austin Powers-like. It's not a time to lose one's head. This guy is pretty good at using his head, though. He doesn't really have much choice. Mr. Trainer says, it's a mental looking hat. I'm working on a ton of Mantic's Walking Dead stuff, just came today, and I finished their giant yesterday in a nice diorama. We're all getting work done. Yes, it seems like lots of people are using this time to up their hobby production, since there's lots of things we can't do right now. He's wobbling a bit on his base here, so I'm going to hold him a little bit by the feet as well. I've kind of got double use out of these giant heads, because not only am I using them for this, I also took moulds of their faces, so I could then place those onto my Shadow Hulk as well, which you will have seen, I imagine. But I'll show you again in a minute anyway. So I originally tried painting this guy with contrast paints, and I wasn't really happy with how it looked at the end. So I think contrasts are going to be fine, but as a base rather than as the finished article. Something to work from, another tool at my disposal, not just magic juice. Okay, so I think he's looking pretty snazzy at the moment. Owen says he looks like something from Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. I have no idea why. Mr. Trina guy. Blue stuff mold or silicone mold? It was blue stuff. So I've probably got the exact one that goes on his face in here somewhere. Which one is it? I think it is this one. So, press his face into the blue stuff, then put green stuff in there, and can you see the family resemblance to that kneecap? Let's get some extra light on that. Let's get the high-tech phone light set up, pointing at this as well. There you go. And the other face that I used is this guy. He's actually on the shoulder there, but he's kind of stretched out, so you might not be able to tell so readily with him. But you get the idea. So, 2 for the price of 1. So this isn't going to be the extent of the paintwork on this guy's skin. It's all very well dry brushing, but we want a kind of progressive, lighter dry brush on the edges and the extreme points. And then after that, of course, we've got the eyes and the teeth and all that good stuff to paint. But I think this pink is looking like a really snazzy colour for him right now. So what we're going to do now, I'm just going to wash the brush. I have to wash my brush with my hand over the water pot here because otherwise it splashes the monitor, which is right in front of me. It has been a great source of inspiration over the last few years, keeping my painting area right in front of the computer. When I first got back into the hobby, I was painting on the kitchen table, and it's tough to stay motivated to keep painting for hours and hours and hours when you can't interact with the world and various forms of media like you can with a computer sitting right in front of you. So I would definitely recommend that. Of course, some people it might be a bad idea, so personal preference has to come into it. Some people might get too distracted by having the world at their fingertips in front of them and not actually get any painting done. But I'm not one of those people. I find it much easier to paint when I can access everything and I can keep an eye out for messages. So, what do we want to do now? I think we should probably try a nice lighter pink, or do we want to go straight for white with this next dry brush? I don't think we want to go as far as white. I'm not sure how to pronounce this name that's just popped up, but let's guess. Keinoa says, very cool use of faces. Yeah, I'm trying to be creative with this army and come up with different weird and wonderful stuff. So I do like converting really strange things, but a lot of armies you don't really have the chance to put that into practice, at least not if you're sticking to how the army is typically presented. But with Night Stalkers, there isn't really a limit to how nuts you can go as far as I can tell. So they're kind of perfect for these really bizarre projects. So let's lighten the pink a little bit. And let's see what's the best way to go about this. A little bit of white in there. Where's the... There's a white there, but I've got a better white that's actually not dried up. This one, I should get rid of this white here. Let's put that to one side because I think it is pretty much empty. So we've got the good stuff out here. Put a little bit in here and then we'll mix it into the pink. So let's get a splodge of pink, splodge of white, a bit more white I think, and a bit more. Okay, there we go, that's nice and pale. Owen used a box of Savage Orcs to make my snakebite battle wagon that you can see the feet under like Fred Flintstone's car. So they have to like run on the spot for a few seconds before it starts moving. I always put that in the same bracket as a cartoon character not falling off a cliff until they realise that they've actually stepped over the edge. They can stand there, and then it's only when that moment dawns on them and they look down that they actually fall. Just nice cartoon logic. Are you going to make a bunch of these guys to use in game, or is this just a hobby project? These guys are going to be Dread Fiends in my Night Stalker army. Because they're basically the right size to be a Dread Fiend, and there is no existing model for them that I'm aware of. So I thought, why not? I had the Hellboy frog monster boss and a couple of giant heads. Then put the word out that I was looking for another frog monster boss so I could get another one to make his bro. And the rest is going to be history. So let's have a dry brush with this lighter pink that I've made here. Very pale indeed. We're not going to go in quite as heavy here. We don't want to catch all the detail with this, we just want to catch the very outmost detail. Like kneecaps, toes, and then a bit down the side. We're not going to push it in as hard as we were with the previous dry brush though. You don't need to catch as much with this one. Everyone says you need to give them a unicorn horn on the forehead. Well, they are going to have hats. That has been confirmed, but they're going to be temporary hats that can be changed. I'm going to make a series of comical hats to put on them. So I'm feeling quite happy with the way this skin is looking now. I think we are going to do a pure white dry brush just to finish off on the very edges. But before that, on the camera it actually makes his eyebrow area look kind of weird and washed out, but it doesn't look like that in real life. Just the lighting's very strong here. Also, what is his name? I'm not sure if I gave them names yet. I don't think I did. I'll have to think about that. They both need a name, though. I know that when I used it on this guy's knee, because the way his face looks kind of squashed up there, this guy's called Matt Damon, because he just looks like him. But the actual non-squashed version of the face doesn't look quite so much like him. So before we do the white dry brush, though, there is going to be another step. Because there are a couple of details I want to pick out in a different colour. And I've got all these purples to play with now. You'll see on the back of him, there are these kind of lines running around his leg. And there's not much chance for picking out different details on this thing, because it's all just kind of knobbly. But these little lines that run around him are definitely something that can be picked out to add a bit of colour variety. So I'm going to pick those out in a different shade of purple, if I can remember which ones I've already used. So I think I used this one that doesn't have a label on it, for the kind of the base. And we've used the pink, so that leaves hexed lichen, or however you want to pronounce that. There you go. So I'm thinking I might use this to paint those. I'm not even sure what they are. Some kind of weird wrappings on him. I could pick those out in this colour, just to add a little bit of spice and variety, and then when I do the white dry brush it'll also catch that part as well and lighten those a bit. So, is this the same paint? Have we used this one? I don't think so. I don't think I've got this on the wet palette already. No. Very different. Careful he doesn't look like a brain. I don't think he'd mind too much if he looks like a brain. No, let's have this brush. I've been using this brush a lot lately, even though it's not really the way it was supposed to be. It was originally supposed to be, I think it was kind of a large detail or maybe base coating kind of brush, but it's got very small now because I hacked off so many bristles from it as it's splayed out over use. So now it's pretty good at the moment until I lose even more bristles. It's okay for these kind of details at the moment, I think. So let's pick these lines out. Gives them something that isn't just the same colour all over. A little bit of variety. I've also got the option of picking out some of the bigger bumps on his skin in a different colour as well. You're getting some red hot sizzling painting tips here, aren't you? By the way, for anyone that's interested, at 9 PM tonight, UK time, it's going to be Andy and Rem play Vermintide. And if you didn't see the announcement, there is going to be a live Andy and Rem show every Tuesday night for the foreseeable future. And we are going to continue with the PC game series as well. So that should be exciting. And I did just hear the front doorbell, so I better make sure that someone actually heard it, so I'll be right back. I have returned. Raphael says, can you make Rem sing a song? Well, it's not as likely that Mr. Remington will be singing songs live in the future, because he had to move out of his Chateau de Remington, and he's now living somewhere with other humans. But he did record some songs. If you saw the last episode, you will have seen the pre-recorded intro and outro song. And he's also going to make jingles for all the show regular segments as well, such as What the Hell Is That? A wildly popular game. I just remembered I forgot to lower my seat. I've been lowering my seat at the desk for painting purposes. It means I don't have to hunch over quite so far to keep the miniature in view of the camera, which is very important. Okay, I think this is looking quite good, this purple. On the topic of Oathmark, I have started looking through that book a little bit, and hopefully I'll have some grasp on it by the time lockdown's finished and I'll be able to find someone to give it a try with. It doesn't look too outrageously complicated, which is nice. Okay, so those are the kind of wrappings, or I'm not even sure if they're organic material he's got running around his legs. You can see it there, picked out in purple. And when that's dry, we're going to do the white dry brush process. But before then, we could probably do some work on the face, the mouth and the teeth specifically. Regarding the hair, I've got decisions to make on that. Is it dark enough? Would a white dry brush on the hair be enough to fix it? If I want to darken it a bit first, I could put a second layer of Hex-Wraith Flame on it. That's always an option. What do we think, folks? The hair in relation to the skin colour, does it need to be a bit darker before I dry brush it in white? Or is it cool already? Does it need a bit more spice and sizzle on it? So I'm going to get a better detail brush out now, and we're going to have a go at the teeth. So let's have this one. Already got some bone colour out from yesterday. Owen says, he looks like monsters in my pocket. I don't know if you had that in the UK, but they were plastic monsters. Yes, we did have monster in my pocket. Those were the days. There was monster in my pocket, followed by mini boglins. Had tons of those things. Okay, let's see if this bone colour's still wet. Not really there. But there was only a tiny amount on the wet palette, and it's actually on a wrinkle in the wet palette as well. So let's apply a bit more. So I'm going to let the palette off with that one, because it was such a tiny amount. Let's put a bit more down here. And time to paint some teeth. The first coat on the teeth anyway. I'm not sure how I'm going to finish them yet. And we can do the inside of the mouth in some kind of colour as well. Not sure about red though. I think maybe it's time for something different for the inside of mouths. Okay, there's the teeth. Let's get him a nice close-up. At what point would it like to focus on his face? Let's see. There you go. Just spotting little bits that I've missed in here. Yeah, I'm not sure the inside of his mouth really needs to be orange. I'm thinking maybe if I just use a dark purple in there. I definitely need to get the purple out to touch up a little bit of the gum that I just kind of messed up there. It's kind of pinky purple that I used yesterday. He looks frustrated having no hands. I imagine he would. Owen says boglins are worth a small fortune on eBay if you got one in good nick. Well, I only have one mini boglin, which is this one, glow in the dark. Someone gave me this. I actually sold all mine when I was a child because parents are foolish and they allow their children to sell toys. Actually, that's a lie because I also have this guy who's not quite an original mini boglin as far as I remember. I think this is from a slightly different range they did. Not one of the original run. I think that's all of them. Only those two. Owen says make his mouth full of blood or some yucky slime. That is an option, to have something in the mouth that's really hideous. Don't know if I've really got any slime colours, but I could have some kind of slime substance running down his mouth. The thing that would spring to mind immediately would be Tamiya clear green paint. I could use that to make some kind of slime. It would look fairly slimy if it was oozing out of his mouth. So the eyes, what colour do we want Night Stalker eyes to be against this pink? All my Abyssal Dwarf monsters have yellow eyes, so I don't want to do that again. What about some kind of really bright green colour? Would that be too similar to his hair? I could paint them white and then put the Hexwraith flame over them like with the hair. Any thoughts on that, folks? I think green for the inside of the mouths is definitely an option. But do I just leave it like that and then put the clear green paint over that so it looks like his whole mouth is like full of ooze? That's kind of the way I'm leaning at the moment. Okay. Yeah, I think the eyes would look kind of ghostly if they were like the hair. So I think I am going to paint those in white. Do we have any white out? No, we don't. Easy to find my paints now because I've painted all the tops of them like this. And I'm looking into the option of getting a paint rack which I can mount on the wall behind the camera. And a couple of options are being explored for that at the moment. Because then I'd be able to get all these paints out the way and have all this space to have more miniatures here, obviously. More space to work. 'Cause it's difficult as it is now. The paints are kind of encroaching too far this way, so I can't cut big things up here, which is annoying. I'm in discussions with someone about the possibility of a 3D printed wall-mounted paint rack. I still have to look for the more conventional options as well. Raphael agrees with the bright green eyes, so let's get the white on them first. We might go for the Citadel Fine Detail brush for this, because it's even finer than this one I was using for the teeth. So, here we go. Just because it's a fine detail brush doesn't mean I'm not going to make a mess of it, though. So we'll see how the white and Hexwraith Flame combo looks on his eyes in a bit when it's dry. And if that doesn't look good, I can always paint over it. This guy is a bit of an experiment for the Night Stalker colour scheme. Okay, so there's the white eyes done. He's looking pretty horrifying already, actually, isn't he? And then if this looks good, this is a technique that I could replicate on the faces on his body that actually do have eyes. Like this one on the middle of his back there has got some eyes. Could do a similar kind of look there, which would draw the attention to all the faces. Another one on his elbow. So I'm hoping this looks good because that would be a pretty cool thing to do, I think. Even the dragon eyes on his hand that's replaced with a dragon that has arms. I do like these kind of projects. I don't do them often enough, really, where I'm just building weird stuff. The last one I did before this army, probably If you've ever seen my 40k Chaos Space Marine army, which is actually just one unit and one vehicle, I was making a crab themed army, but the defiler I made was really bizarre, using like half of a Barbie doll. So if you haven't seen that, that's something you could look up as well. I might just flash up a picture of that now. Let me just grab it from somewhere. Let's see. Where do I keep this sucker? There it is. Okay, I'm going to just add that into the streaming software here. Okay, there you go. That's what it looks like, with a couple of little crabs in front of it as well. So I made that quite a few years ago, probably about 6 or 7 years ago. But since then I haven't made too much weird stuff until now. But that was a lot of fun to do as well. I just like building bizarre things, and that's definitely a bizarre thing. Okay, let's get back to the task at hand. So what else do we want to do on here? I suppose we could do the white dry brush now. So let's clean off this fine detail brush. Speaking of crabs, GW Rumour Engine is a crab claw. Is it indeed? Well, I'll definitely keep my eyes peeled for that. I'm always interested in different crab miniatures. So, fine detail brush away. Dry brush is... Where did I put that? Here we go. Raphael says, please contact your therapist ASAP. I don't think that's necessary. After all, they're only models. There haven't been any real mutilations or making hideous, monstrous, mutant crab-human hybrids in my own home for real. If there had been, then I would definitely agree with you that therapy would be required. Any kind of cross-species hybrid creation is generally frowned upon by the scientific community. Okay, let's dry brush some white. Not much. We're going to be doing a decent dry brush of white on the hair, though. Quite thick there, so we're going to start with the hair while there's more paint on the brush, and then we're going to go for the other stuff later. So, starting with the hair. One thing I don't really like on miniatures is when it's obvious that the last layer that you did was a wash, and it's kind of stained the raised areas and sunk into the crevices, and it looks too obvious sometimes. I used to do all my painting that way. It was just base coat wash, that was it. But now, I don't like looking at it really. I always think there's more that could have been done there, so I try not to end with that phase. Okay, there's the hair. Now let's have a go at the very pointy raised bits. There's not much paint on the brush here at all, so it's not going to pick out a lot. Just the very tops of the spikes. So even if I'm pressing down quite hard here, it's because there's no paint on the brush almost. So it's not actually overloading the area with white. There's so little on there. Okay, now some on the face. We're going to be careful with this though. We don't want an overload of colour here. Very small amounts of colour coming off the brush here. Barely anything. Extremely slow build up. Okay, I think I'm pretty happy with this. Looking pretty damn cool at the moment, I would say. So I'm also looking for other ideas for my Night Stalker army. Anything that isn't represented in the range that is in the army list, I'm going to look into conjuring up myself with spare parts. And even things that are in the army list I might heavily modify. The basic troops not so much, because there's just so many of them that it would be an awful lot of work, but any of the kind of centerpiece things I may do some serious work on, even if there is a model out there for them already. I think I've got a bit of a blister on my finger here from drilling the holes in the base for the Grotesques last night. Using this. Okay, I think we can move on to the next phase here. So the mouth, I think we established that it's going to be slimy and green. So let's see what brush we want to use for this. Maybe a Citadel detail brush that no longer provides detail. So it's kind of flat on the end rather than a point. Because it's essentially a useless brush, but I can use it for these purposes. Because it's small enough to get in there, but it doesn't need to have a fine point for this. So, Tamiya Clear Green. So it is going to have a shine to it, but I am going to varnish over the top of it, which will matte it down again. And then should I choose for that area to be shiny, I can always either put another coat after the varnish, or I can put gloss varnish on it. Steve says, are you going to do a horde of bloodworms? I believe that is one thing that does not have a model range for the Night Stalker army. So in that case, it's probably something I would conjure up myself. And I'm not sure what to use yet, because I haven't really done any research on that, because I've got a lot to be getting on with at the moment. Have you seen that 12 Scarecrow Horde army on Fanatics? Yes, I've seen that at an event as well, and it's very terrifying. I haven't had to play against it, but I'm sure it would be quite a challenge. So, clear green into the mouth. I'm going to make sure it touches the teeth as well, because if this guy's just been chewing up this hideous stuff, it would be all over his teeth. And I'm going to have a lot dribbling down as well, the bottom set of teeth, out the side of his mouth there. Around his teeth. Like so. He actually looks pretty damn horrifying so far, doesn't he? Dwarven Darkness is Weight, not Hellfane. The Hellfane's going to be next, but he needs some airbrushing on him. So I can't just plough straight into it because it's a new airbrush. The old one broke, so I haven't set up the new one yet. But he's going to be next. I may not even finish this guy before I get to the Hellfane, but I'm going to prime the Hellfane soon, and then I need to airbrush the top part of it in gold. So it's such a vast area. Doing it by hand would be a bit annoying. So let's put that green away. And hopefully this looks good, because this kind of weird green ooze coming out of all their mouths would be quite a cool look, I think. And now we need to do the X-Wraith Flame on the eyes, which are dry now. So I'm just going to wash off this brush. Only 2 likes on this video so far. That is an outrage. So for anyone who wasn't here earlier during the announcements, later on, in about 2.5 hours, there's going to be Andy and Rem play Vermintide again. And that is going to be open to the public yet again, so anyone who plays Vermintide may be able to jump in on that game. There's going to be 2 spare slots. And the other announcement is that the Andy and Rem show is back for the foreseeable future every Tuesday for the moment. And that's very exciting. We're going to bring back all the classic segments. And when the lockdown's over, hopefully we'll be able to start getting games in again. Not necessarily just Age of Sigmar, but there are other kind of peripheral GW products as well that are worth a look. So, X-Wraith Flame. And I'm not putting this in the Citadel paint holder, so I'm taking my life into my own hands here. And I'm going to apply this to the eyeballs. So he's looking pretty horrifying, I reckon. Steve says, teach Rem kings. I am planning on. Don't worry. I've encouraged him to keep a couple of his armies on square bases for the purposes of teaching him Kings of War. So that's definitely on the agenda. Because obviously he's very much a hobbyist rather than a gamer. So Kings of War would be perfect with the whole unit-based diorama possibilities that you can conjure up. So he just needs a bit of a nudge. So this guy's looking pretty terrifying. I don't think he needs pupils on his eyes. I think he should just look like it's raw, weird energy in there rather than actual eyeballs. So I think he's looking pretty darn good. I don't know what else to actually do to him now. Does he need anything else? Or is that just a done colour scheme? What do we think? Does he need more work? What would you do, folks? What does he require? Does he need anything? Other than a base, obviously. And then soon we're going to do his bro the same way so they can be twins out there on the battlefield. The one thing I'm pondering is going in and picking out some of the little bumps in maybe a different colour. That's an option. I'm not sure it's necessary. I think the light is so bright, I'm not sure you can actually see the green. Let's cover that for a second. Does that help? Not really. Let's get him up really close to the camera now, so you can have a close-up of his face. There you go. Deliciously diabolical. I think this is going to be the video thumbnail right here. And just in case it doesn't give me that option, I might actually screenshot this. So, Steve says some of his armies look nice. Yeah, I think he could do some great dioramas. Yeah, he just needs some encouragement. I've got a couple of ideas for how to convince him to get into that, though, because he really doesn't need any more Age of Sigmar armies just to sell. I think I might try and persuade him to do a Kings of War army next. Raphael says, what colour base would have your army? Yeah, I'm not even sure how to do the bases for this Night Stalker army yet. Obviously they need bases, I just have no idea what colour or what kind of theme. I want to do something weird. Now that I've gone for this kind of slime motif, is that something I should incorporate in the bases? Should I have some kind of weird slime pits? Possibly with some of them crawling out of the slime pits? That's a possibility. It's good Night Stalkers cannot get you through your monitor. Well, they can haunt your dreams and your nightmares, so I wouldn't get too confident there. So, what do we think? Do we think he needs any more work? Is the hair okay? Is the skin okay? Are the eyes okay? Is the mouth okay? Does it all tie together nicely? Does anything need a bit more spice and sizzle to it? That's the main question for this video. So tomorrow we'll be probably working on maybe even this guy, trying to get him to match him, or if I've got the Hellfane ready to go by then he'll be next, and the Hellfane crew as well. There's also the option of doing, at some point, I will be doing it anyway, another episode building Night Stalker stuff now that I've got all these extra scarecrows and other things as well. But I'm sure people are looking forward to seeing the Hellfane finished. Raphael is not going to sleep, apparently. Well, that's probably the safest option when this guy's around. You don't want to be sleeping too much. You probably want to, if you're going to sleep, make sure that you've taped one of your eyes open. And then even if you're having a nightmare, you've got like half your vision still in reality. So presumably it would be easier to wake up to escape the nightmare. I don't know if that's how it works, but it's worth a try. Okay, I think I'm going to wrap this video up in a minute, but before we go, I am going to get the pictures of the grotesques up again, because some people won't have been here at the start who are watching this live, and they might not have seen these images. So these are the grotesques that I've been working on almost for the last 3 weeks. Started off assembling them live on one of these videos, and working out the best positions on the base for them, building the base, painting the base, assembling them, converting them so to repose some of the arms, blending in those conversions seamlessly so you couldn't tell that the shoulder joint was unnatural. And a lot of work has gone into them, as you know if you've watched all these episodes. And then there was that brief period of a few days when I was waiting for a paint delivery so I could actually finish the job, because I was waiting for a very specific shade of red and the wet palette so I could complete them. And we did the eyeballs. I varnished them last night, attached them to the base later last night. I got them totally finished because we are on lockdown, so I got them finished very late at night and put the pictures up on Facebook at something like 5 in the morning, and then went to bed. And very pleased with how they've turned out, and they're going to be put straight into the army. I need to take a nice army-wide shot with them featured in it now. Raphael says they look great. Is one horde enough? To be the ultimate competitive gamer, one horde is clearly not enough. But for somebody who's got lots of things, lots of projects on the go, I don't think I can justify painting another horde of them just now, because that would be expensive. And I've got other things to be working on. Once I've got my Night Stalkers done, I'll probably add more. But I don't like just spamming tons of the same thing in an army, unless I play the same army for years and years, in which case I may eventually acquire more of the same thing once I realise it's really good. Like, for example, with my Goblin army, the Troll Hordes, I started off with just one and then two, and then after playing the army for years and years, eventually added more, because I just liked how they worked, and they were effective for me. So I don't tend to spam things right off the bat. I just buy a bit of everything that I think looks cool and then try and make a good army list from it. So the next time I play at a tournament, I'm definitely going to try to squeeze in the Grotesques, hopefully the champion as well. It depends on the point level of the event. I was supposed to be playing in a tournament around about this time, I think, which was the Easter Beaster, and I was hoping to have my Grotesques ready to play in that event. But obviously no tournaments are going ahead right now, for obvious reasons. And it would have been their debut, and that was going to be 2,495 points, I think, that event. So I could have definitely squeezed both of these into that. But unfortunately, that's not going to happen now. But if tournaments are back by what month? There's Swords of Summer, which is, I think that's in August. So if lockdown's over by then and tournaments are back in full swing, I think that one is quite a high point level. So I would be able to put them in there as well. But the Grotesques, they're definitely going to come in, even at 2,000 points, I think, because they are very competitive. They seem to be quite strong. The players that do well seem to take them quite a lot. So they're definitely going to find their way in there. I don't know who's going to come out for them to come in, but they'll find their way in there. And I think we can wrap this one up. So if anyone's got any last minute comments or questions, drop them in now, because we're going to end this, and then I'll be back in 2 hours 20 minutes for Andy and Rem play Warhammer End Times Vermintide on the PC, with 2 player slots open for the public if anyone is interested in dropping in for that, anyone who has Vermintide. And in the future we're going to play Vermintide 2 and Space Hulk Deathwing as well. So don't forget to check out all the links in the description, my Facebook page where you can look at all these pictures in greater detail. You can look at them to your heart's content. And there's Twitter on there as well. Steve says, are you hoping to go to Clash of Kings in October? I'm hoping to go to Clash of Kings, but it's not as close to me as it was the last couple of years. So that is going to require some travel and some accommodation. So I'm looking into that though. Assuming it's going to go ahead, I would hope that nowhere is still in lockdown by then, because that's a long way off. Raphael says, do you play via Universal Battle? I haven't done. I used to play Warhammer on Universal Battle about 8 years ago, but I haven't tried it for Kings of War, and it's not that interesting to me. So I really like the actual look of the armies out there on the table, rather than just the static, pixely representations of them. If lockdown continues much longer, then I may not have a choice. I may have to jump into Universal Battle for Kings of War, and it's something I would be willing to do at some point, but that point is probably not right now. So keep your eyes peeled for that one. Okay, don't forget to like the video, obviously, subscribe if you're not. There's also links in the description if people want to throw endless tides of cash my way in exchange for producing this daily red hot, spicy, sizzling, juicy, succulent, tender, moist, mouth-watering, ice cool, refreshing content. And all that remains to be said on that note, I think, is I'm not even going to say goodnight because I'm coming back later. So let's just say until 9 p.m.